How do you build a better Amazon business? Are you currently selling on Amazon but not confident in your current sales model that you utilize? Today, we're going to hear from a special guest who's been selling successfully with some really big numbers for a number of years, but recently decided to move 100% private label because she wasn't confident in the long term sustainability of her previous sales model. We're going to hear what that model was and hear about her transition to private label, all coming up in this episode of the Amazon Seller Podcast.
This is the Amazon Seller Podcast, hosted by multi-million-dollar Amazon sellers helping you launch your private label business to the next level. Find us on amazingfreedom.com or subscribe to this podcast on iTunes and YouTube.
Hey, welcome back to the Amazon Seller Podcast. Before we get into today's show with our special guest, I want to remind you to go to amazingfreedom.com/early. Right now, at the time that this podcast episode will be released, our training on private label that's only opened up a couple times a year is available, okay? Our 4-part free workshop training on private label is now available. You can go check out the first couple of videos, and you are not going to want to miss the couple free bonuses that we have. We have some really awesome stuff like how to find your competitors' back-end search terms, how to find your competitors' exact manufacturers, okay? Have you ever had a competitor or another seller on Amazon where you wanted to know where they were getting their products made? Well, now you can. We'll show you this in some of our free resource downloads. We also have a free brand new Chrome extension that we're going to be giving away. You can get all of those downloads, again, completely 100% free by going to amazingfreedom.com/early, as long as that workshop is open. It's only open for a limited amount of time, so you definitely want to go and check that out. Now you're going to be hearing from our special guest coming up in this episode of the Amazon Seller Podcast. Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Amazon Seller Podcast. I'm joined today by our very own Liran Hirschkorn and a special guest today, and actually a personal friend of ours, Jing Gao. Jing has a really interesting, incredible story. She's been selling on Amazon for a couple years now, and at one point she was doing several $100,000 a month in sales. However, she has shifted her selling model since that time. It's a crazy story, incredible. She'll give us the details in just a minute here, why she decided to really make a shift in her business model, her selling, that probably has not only changed her business model, but also her life. So Liran, I'm gonna hand it over to you to introduce Jing. You know her a little bit better than I do even, have hung out with her. I know that you've spent some time in California with her. Really cool opportunity that you've had to do that. And why don't you intro Jing, and then Jing, tell us your story.
Yep, and actually went to China with Jing about a year ago. So and spent some time in California. So I think I first met Jing, I don't know, must be a year and a half or maybe close to 2 years ago now. When I met Jing, I believe your model, Jing, was fully doing retail arbitrage. Is that pretty accurate?
Yeah, I was 100%.
Okay. And how long have you been, tell us a little bit about your backstory, how long you've been selling on Amazon, and how you got into starting out with retail arbitrage.
Okay, so I didn't start my online selling business with Amazon. I actually started with eBay. This is back in 2013 when I just wanted to flip a few things on eBay, and I realized, it's picking up in sales. I was working as an accountant back then. I was working for this company that sold mostly sunglasses. And then the boss was always asking me, hey, Jing, can you help me with this upload? There's data that's not working out. And I thought to myself, why don't I do the same thing? Take my own business and then do it on Amazon. That's what started it. That went by, I want to say 2014 to 2017, 3 years. And I started getting a lot, and most of my RA friends probably know, a lot of inauthentics. That's when I realized I really needed to shift.
Right. So you started out by essentially going out to outlet stores. I know one of the things you did, and I think it's okay to talk about, is you would buy like high-end women's bags, right? And you even create your own listings on Amazon. But, sometimes Amazon would do things like sending a women's Coach bag and like a poly bag, right, to somebody. It's authentic. You bought it directly from Coach, created a listing, but the person gets something in a poly bag and says, hey, it's a fake. And you're on the hook, right?
Right. The worst cases I've been getting, in my past early life, it's whenever a customer buys something, they don't like it or they don't love the color, the size, whatever reason, they return to FBA. But 100% of the time, FBA doesn't know how to repackage it the proper way. So when something, a $200-300 handbag is sent to you in a clear plastic bag, it doesn't exactly ring as a real authentic product to you.
Right. And so Amazon, the customer then returns it and says, hey, I'm not sure this is real. Amazon turns around and says, hey, we're giving you, this is inauthentic. And then you need to start proving the authenticity of that product, which eventually led to you being suspended, right? Is that kind of what happened?
Yes. I don't get my time correct anymore. It's just too much work these days. But I think it was last year in May, that's when I got suspended. And then I started going to conferences. At that time, I had 17 inauthentics on my account. And it was mostly because Amazon kept sending back the same email saying, we need more information. That's when they just decided to shut me down.
And so that has to be super stressful, right? You're running a business that's generating, $200,000 to $300,000 a month in sales, and suddenly Amazon shuts you down. And one thing I know too is that you have a warehouse, you have employees, and you even have your parents helping you in the business, right? So everybody's sort of relying on this money that's coming in from Amazon.
Exactly. And it was also during a time period where we had very minimal capital. So we relied mostly on credit cards. Amazon cuts off, the stream of income. We can't pay anything.
Right.
And we're in debt completely. Yeah.
Right. And you have payroll and employees and warehouse overhead. And man, that has to be, crazy stressful. I imagine that, it's could be incredibly stressful for just like a one-person show running a business from a house, right? When Amazon cuts you off, but now you also feel responsible for all these people that you're employing, and they're relying on you for their livelihood. And suddenly Amazon shuts you down. So what do you do when you're kind of faced in that type of situation?
That's a tough question, because before my suspension, I did not know another single Amazon seller. I was completely on my own. I didn't know anyone who sells on Amazon. All my friends had jobs like accounting, academic advisor, anything that's not related to online selling. So I Googled, found this one person that lives in Santa Monica that says he does, reinstatement letters. I bought a letter for $300. That did nothing. So I kept researching for another 2-3 weeks. And then I found Cynthia Stein. She's a very close friend of mine now. She helped me. And then actually went to meet her personally in Atlanta for the Seller Labs conference. That's when I, really thought to myself, I have to see that person face to face before I can trust you with my account again. So flying, all the way out, that's what it took.
Right. So you realized, I need to kind of network and know some people in this game, because I realize I need help in certain areas, and there's probably other people going through this, and I can find a way to have somebody help me with reinstatement. So you went out, and that's so you started going to conferences, and you didn't really stop, right? So I guess you saw the benefit of networking, or what made you, because I know I've seen you at a few conferences. What was kind of that shift that made you, say, okay, I need to start like networking and getting out there?
I think my very first conference friend was Brian Freefelder. He sat me down and he just introduced me to thousands, I want to say thousands of softwares. Jing, I can't believe you're not automating this. You're doing that by hand. This by Excel sheet, what? That's when I realized there's so much more I needed to learn from everyone who's doing the same thing. And I also really want to share my side of the difficulty, my issues with my own business. And friends come up with similar situations or how they resolved it. It's just so helpful. It helps you to grow. It helps the other person to grow. And I realized, it's important to make friends in the same industry, not like avoid any live person you see that's selling on Amazon. Basically.
Right. Right. And I think we've, Nate, myself, Andy, I think we've seen networking has been a major catalyst for growth, in our business and, Facebook groups. That's I would say kind of first level of contact interaction with people, but there's nothing like sitting down with somebody face to face. I'm sure, I know Brian, he's a great guy. I'm sure he saw the situation that you're in and realized like, man, you need some help. I can probably introduce you to some people that can help you out and help you not only automate your business, but also sort of get out of the situation. So you got unsuspended, right? But you kind of had to continue with this model of
Leon, let's think about this though, because Jing was doing, $200,000, $300,000 a month in average monthly sales. And so at the time she had like a cash cow going, right? And like she said, she was reliant on this credit card for credit. So, it kind of is this cash flow steamroll that you don't want to stop, but then Amazon forces it sometimes. But, even at that point, it'd be tough to give up, right? No matter what, even with all those inauthentic claims, it's tough to give that up. And we know a lot of people in our circles and our groups who do similar type of selling, right? It might not be necessarily the same thing Jing was selling, but, shoes like Nike shoes or some kind of clothing or shoes, that's a really common cash cow, cash flow product for sellers. But typically even shoes, handbags, that kind of thing kind of run into those same higher end products like that tend to run into those issues of inauthentic, or you kind of get stuck in this loop sometimes, right? Where you're chasing those profits because they're so good, but then you also start thinking to yourself like, wow, how long is this going to last? And am I always going to feel like I'm looking over my shoulder at Amazon, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's like
you had a similar situation, right, Leon? So maybe you can tell your situation again.
I had a similar situation. I mean, I started out doing arbitrage and essentially going to stores, and I would go like on a weekly basis to Nike and spend like $5,000 to $10,000. I would bring a helper with me. We'd clear out every good item out of that store, out of one store. I know people who go to multiple stores, and then send that stuff into Amazon and buy shoes for $30 to $50 and sell them for $150. And it's a great, way to make quick, really fast
money.
It
is good money, right?
It is really good money. But then I started to get those like inauthentic claims from customers that said, hey, wait a second, this isn't real. Or sometimes we'd have to repackage in a box because we didn't have the Nike box. The tops were cut off. So we repackaged, to boxes and stuff. And customers would say, wait, I'm not sure if this is real. And we'd have to show receipts, to Amazon. And it's kind of like a crack dealer who has to get a minimum wage job, right? You can't keep up that money, right? Because like it's really slow, doing things the other way. So you have to take a step back if you want to transition, out of that. And that's what I did. I started doing private label, kind of like launch some products while I was still doing that. And then it was to the point where I had like 2 inauthentic claims, one after the other. And for me, that was like a emotional decision. I was like, that's it. I'm done with it. And then I went full force into private label. And I think Jing kind of had a similar story, except it took you a little bit longer to break out of that cycle because you had employees and other people relying on you for that money coming in, right?
I have quite a lot of overhead. We still have 2 employees in the warehouse that's, packing and picking. And then I also have my parents working in the same office with me. I currently have 3 VAs. I've downsized from 4 to 3, overseas. So there's a lot of cost and a lot of expense that goes out every single day. That's why it took me a much longer time period to stop RA completely. But a few months ago, roughly before we really entered fall, but around the same time, I was hit with, I want to say 18, 19 ASINs at a time for each inauthentic case. And they're repetitive ASINs that occurred before that's no longer being sold. I'm pretty sure there's a glitch somewhere, but it's just the amount of stress that took me over. I didn't want to handle that anymore. And then finally, like later on, I said, you know what, this is it. I'm going to move over to PL. If down the road, next few months, I'm not going to make a penny out of this business, at least I can sleep better at night, at least.
Right. So how did you sort of make that transition, right? Because there's probably a lot of people listening to this who might be in a similar situation, or might be in a model that they want to, they know they want to build their own brand or get into private label. How did you go about saying, okay, I'm going to start, working on something with my own brand, and this is all I know, going to stores and buying stuff. How did you sort of transition that into learning how to do private label and doing it?
Well, the number one thing that I wish I had known before was to learn how Amazon seller ranks or selling ranks work. I didn't know anything about that when I was doing RA. I was doing everything based on my own preference, like a lot of you know already. But number two is, it's never too early to take action. Because I met Leron, I think if you don't remember, we met first time at CES with Kara. And Kara looked at me and she said, Jing, want to go to China? That's what hooked me. I thought, I speak the language. Why am I not doing PL? So I went to China with Leron and Kara, not knowing a single thing about private label. I think most people are way better than I am at that. I was at that stage. I just went and I watched and I looked at all these products that's available. And I came back, and every single day I just look on Amazon to see what's selling, and I research. I think you just really have to start somewhere. It's going to be hard, but it's going to be so much more amazing than if you were to work 24/7, trying to squeeze every single minute out of your life to go out and shop.
Right. And then you took a leap of faith, because I know we did an event in Kentucky. It was a wholesale and private label summit, and we taught the private label component. It wasn't a cheap event to go to, right? So what drove you to say, I need to really kind of, get a better education to do this the right way?
Well, I was, taking a closer look at my RE business and how little my margin was compared to a lot of the stories that's out there. Well, a lot of friends would talk about their margin with wholesale, and especially PL. Of course, PL is way higher compared to RA. It's, I don't know, double or triple that. And I was doing so much work compared to people who's doing PL, like Leron. He sits at home and he's on his computer, and I'm out there driving everywhere, fighting people in traffic, in parking lot. We live in LA. It's the world's most busy place ever. And I realized, it might not be worth it. If I had to put together all the cash to learn how to do another thing, so be it,
Right.
And I got a lot of personal attention from you guys when I was at the Kentucky retreat. You sat me down. I don't know if you remember. And you said, Jing, all right, what are you going to do? Do you have a plan? We're going to China in the next week or so. And I looked at you, I'm like, I don't. You walked me through the stages of how to do research. Here's what you should look at, and the biggest point to see in the product. That's what really clicked in me. Okay, I can do something before I go to China. I was a little prepared compared to you, very little.
Okay, so fast forward. You went to China again for the recent Canton Fair, and so walk us through a little bit about kind of the story of what you shared with me, which I think is really amazing in terms of how you went about to find potential products and then actually source those products.
You're talking about this past April, right? I think.
Yes.
Okay. So last year in fall, we went to the Canton Fair together, you, me, and Kara. And I saw a lot of amazing products, but internet in China just is not the same thing as we have in the US. I couldn't do as much research. So I took notes, I took photos, I took flyers, brochures, came back and I really studied it. And I studied it the heck out of it. So this time, April, I went with my father. So we went to EU, and that's my first stop. That's where I started. I looked at different vendors, asked for different questions. I was telling Liran about how I source my products. So most of the people you see at the Canton Fair or EU or anywhere else in the world, in China, basically is going to be a trader. So they trade products. And some people might not have a problem with that. I do have a little issue. It's just based on my personal preference. I don't like certain ways products are being packaged. I don't like the size, the color. I think it's easier to go direct to a supplier. So, you know, at Canton Fair, all I did was I asked questions. I talked to pretty much every vendor that sold the same product. You know, where is your product made? What district in China is it made? And lo and behold, my dad turns and asks me, do you want to just take a trip out there and then we look at factories?
So
and that's exactly what we did.
And, you know, some people would think that being Chinese, you sort of have an advantage. But I remember when we were at the Canton Fair, you had some trouble because some of the vendors just thought you were like a competitor trying to get intel on their products.
Absolutely.
And you actually had to sort of prove that you were a real seller and, you know, in the US and not like, you know, a competitive factory. So kind of interesting that, you know, I would think you have like an advantage being Chinese, but actually it could also be a disadvantage, right?
Yeah. I don't know if you remember, I was with Kara and I was having such a big issue getting flyers or even getting any attention to me. So what Kara did was every booth that we went to, and she would ask, hey, Jing, you want me to hold your bag while you look at things? And that in a way was, you know, her being submissive to me to help me as a business or a boss, whatever it was, that got people's attention. Oh, this is the lady that we should talk to. I was still very discouraged. I don't know if you remember. And you said, Jing, are you going to let this stop you? Are you going to sit here and really just soak yourself in sadness? Or are you going to pick it up and do something about it? That's when I turned my day around the next day. That was quite an amazing trip for me.
That sounds like Liran.
Yeah, I had to give you a little pep talk.
Yes, you did.
Hey, Liran, can I ask a question to Jing here? Jing, obviously you've been going through this transition. You know, you're at this point been selling for a couple of years, but to private label, you're relatively new. Maybe I could just ask, obviously you've been to China with Liran. That was a cool experience. You went to our Kentucky summit. It was great to meet you there as well, but maybe you could just share what it's like to be able to connect with Liran, not just because you did these trips, just because you're part of the inner circle. Maybe I know you guys message and stuff, so maybe you could just give us a quick, you know, recap of what it's like to be able to kind of ask Liran questions like everybody is able to in our inner circle and kind of PM him directly for those.
Absolutely. I almost don't want to share how often I talk to Liran. I'm just afraid that people are going to take advantage of that. But pretty much every single time I have a question, I message Liran, and it's within 10 seconds or at most 5 minutes, he gets back to you. He's like, do this or do that. And I want to say 99.9% of the time, it fixes everything. Just last week, we were talking about some headline ads. I'm like, oh, they keep on rejecting me. And Liran said, do this. And that works amazingly. I
was going to say, have you been able to ask a question yet that he doesn't know the answer to?
No.
Probably not. It's probably hard, right? It's probably difficult to find one.
It's really hard. I can't find anything. The only time he couldn't answer my question was when we were in China and I asked, what do you want to eat?
That's all right. That's how we stump him, non-Amazon related.
That could be a scary question.
Yep. That was a scary question.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So you actually at the Canton Fair went to So you asked the trading companies there who are just kind of middlemen. You asked them, where's the factory? And then you and your dad actually went to the factory, went to those cities, right? Just without having any connection or anything. And just started like asking people if they knew a factory or?
Well, okay. There's two reasons I ask people where their products are made. One, I want to know, get the information out of them. And two, if they're really lying to me, if they really own a factory. If you get the same consistent answer from every booth and one person says, oh no, it's made here locally or in the city, that they're lying. And we, after a few answers, we went to the city, we went to mostly villages. I won't lie to you about that. It's none of the places I went to was city. And we just got there. One story that we had was we went to a village where it was so far away from the train station that we had to take a taxi for an hour. It was at that point where I got really scared. If something happens to us, I don't know how to get home. I really didn't have an idea. And we walked out of the hotel, not knowing where to go, not having a contact number, walked downstairs, got out, and turned left. There was this one little tea kind of like the bubble tea area that we have, but they sell tea, they sell alcohol, they sell cigarettes. So it's kind of a weird combination. But there was, this elderly man that's sitting there, and he spoke a different dialect. So my dad did most of the talking. And he said, oh, why are you guys here? You obviously are not from here. Oh, you want to find this product? I know someone's son that does that, owns a factory. And I actually have a few friends that own factories like that. And we said, you know what? We would love to see those factories. So we went to see one after another. So you just go out and you ask the local people.
Wow.
That's exactly what we did.
Wow, that's really impressive. I mean, and courageous and like risky, right? I mean, you didn't know what you would, find ultimately, but you went and then you ended up finding the factories direct. And so let's fast forward now. This is Q4. What does your private label business look like? Now, and I think before we got on here to record live, you said you'd completely stopped the RA business. So congratulations on making that transition. No more enough claims, hopefully. And what does your private label business look like right now? Obviously, we're not going to talk about the products you sell, but talk a little bit about what you're currently doing in that business.
So I am only doing a fraction of what I was doing in RA, and that's a pretty big goal to have to hit because the margin difference. But I think I have around 50 to 60 ASINs at the moment.
Wow.
24 individual listings with variations on them. It's a lot easier to manage after you post a product and you just watch the sale. You make minor adjustments here and there. I think every single day I get to the office, my job is no longer taking a look at, who's upset now, which customer is unhappy. My job now is to look at, this product might be running out of stock. Let's talk to the employees and have them have a daily plan. This is what you're going to do. One of my issues this holiday is that I went out complete out of stock. Being my first TL Q4, this is quite scary for me. I was screaming pretty much around saying I was half of my ASINs went out of stock completely. But next year I'll know better. It's a good problem to have. Definitely is.
Right. Definitely.
Those are the good problems that we say, our course members, our group members have a lot of times where it is frustrating. Liran, you dealt with out of stock issues this year too. So it does happen to people that have been doing this a little bit longer, even Jing, but it is one of those good problems that happens if you do the process right.
Yep. Yeah. And I've dealt with some out of stock issues, but my Q4 is just keep getting better and better. And my Q4 this year is much better than my Q4 last year. So, that's something that you'll deal with, especially when you have new products and you don't know what kind of velocity you're going to expect. But the one thing is that you don't necessarily need to get to those $300,000 monthly numbers in order to generate the same profit margins, right? Because your margins are are significantly better. You also have less warehouse employees, right? Now
Right.
less. You don't have people
Yeah.
that you pay to go out and shop and do some of the things that you did in your RA business, right?
Exactly. So we downsized by one employee, no more shoppers. So we're cutting back on expenses a lot already. So and I think we're doubling margin compared to what RA was.
Wow.
So if I can do maybe half or 1/3 of what I was doing, I might be really happy.
Right.
Jing,
That's my
another
goal,
thing
2018.
Another thing you've probably considered, and you mentioned earlier, was you're kind of getting tired, right? Running around the stores and dealing with the traffic. I'm sure another benefit that you'll start to see even more as you get into this more and more into 2018 is just the one, not feeling scared all the time, like you were saying, but then also feeling like you have this business now that you're not just working for the business, but the business is kind of working for
Right.
you, something that you can grow and scale and eventually maybe even take yourself out of the business even more or be able to sell it, right? So there are these possibilities, I'm sure, in your head. Maybe right now you're still working
Yeah.
towards those, but it probably is cool to see that happening.
I'm already seeing some really happy effects it's having on my life. For one, when I used to do RA, whenever someone asked me, oh, what do you do for a living? It's always a really tough question to answer. I mean, I'm an Amazon seller, but I don't sell my own products. I buy them in store and I sell them online. To most people, it seems like a flipper. But now I can tell people, oh, I'm a brand owner. I trademark my own brand. I create my own products. I design everything. It's a really happy thing to talk about. You can see the significant increase in my emotions of happiness.
That's something, Liran, we don't talk about enough probably on our podcast, but it's not all just about the numbers, right? There's a emotional and lifestyle balance that, again, we don't talk about enough probably, but it's really refreshing to hear that, right?
Exciting. Yeah, it kind of reminds me. So I've been seeing these sponsored ads from ClickFunnels in the last couple of weeks. You've probably seen the same ones, Nate. And one of the ads is that the marriage you want, the life you want, the success you want, the happiness you want, all comes through the kind of business you build, right? Because if you build a great business, then you're doing that to support a lot of the other goals that you have for your life, right? Why are we all doing this, right? So that we can build a better future, right, for our kids, that we can build more security, that we can have the lifestyle we want, right? It's all just like you said, not just about the numbers. So the peace of mind, right? The peace of mind that you have, being able to sleep at night, not getting those inauthentic claims, the happier emotional feelings about being proud of what you're doing, creating your own products, the ability knowing that you can get out of the business and sell it. All those things are why we do the business, right? So
Exactly.
we often probably don't take enough time to actually kind of reflect on that, but that's why we do, what we do. And, it's also why, one of the things that gives us the most, the feeling of accomplishment is being able to help other sellers kind of achieve help other sellers achieve some of these goals in their lives, right? So that's kind of why we do what we do. And so if you had to give a piece of advice to people out there who have not gone into private label, building their own brand, what do you think is the one piece of advice that somebody might be seeing and saying, yeah, I'm in kind of similar situation? What would your advice be?
I've always had the same advice for people: just do it. I mean, it seems really scary. It's intimidating. I didn't even know what selling ranks are. I don't think anyone can have, a worse situation than where I was at. I think if you just start doing something, every single piece will come to you. There's nothing that you can get fully prepared in life. Just do it, and then slowly everything will come together. That's how I felt about my PL journey. I didn't know how to do sponsored ads. I didn't know how to do anything. And slowly it just comes to you. You just have to do it somewhere.
Right. And I'm sure it'd be great to, have you back, and see kind of where this journey takes you on, right? You have, you said like 24 different unique products, and I'm sure a year from now, right, you're going to be at 100 unique products, right? And hopefully matching what you did in your RA business, at least in terms of profits, but with a much better peace of mind and with a business that's actually worth something really valuable that you can just sell, right? Because you can't sell an RA business. So it's awesome to hear, your story and the hustle, right, of going to China, getting, going to the factories, finding the suppliers directly. It's something I've never done myself, right? So I've always just gone through Alibaba. So yeah, could I be paying probably a little bit better if I did that, or maybe found I had some quality issues and had to find a better quality factory second time around sometimes. So yeah, maybe I could have avoided some of those issues had I had the same sort of hustle that that you did in your business. So it's really an awesome
I think you're
story.
doing better. I'm sorry, I wanted to say something. I think you're doing really well already with Alibaba, just because so many suppliers will look at you and know that you're so much more serious. You're a big seller, you hustle a lot, and they take non-Asian looking people very seriously when it comes to placing an order. I'm not saying this in a really bad way. I just think people who look differently than Chinese go to China, place an order, just look so serious because, they're from a whole different continent. They flew so far and they're trying to buy something. I have to take them seriously. That's what the supplier would think. And I think you have an advantage just being who you are.
the non-Chinese advantage, something I'd never thought about. It's my next ebook.
It's good to get a different perspective here.
Right. Yeah. It is good to have a different perspective, but going to China with Jing was great because she was able to translate. And we did have some great food because of that too. It was a really good experience going. And I would say that, for me, one of the biggest benefits of going there was actually visiting the suppliers that I'd originally met on Alibaba. And I would say, people starting out, you don't need to spend your money initially on going to China. Once you have some suppliers, it's good to make those face-to-face relationships. I'm sure that's something that's helped you tremendously, going into the factories and meeting them face-to-face to really build rapport and trust with those suppliers. But it's not something I feel like you need to do starting out, especially if you're, kind of playing with the limited budget in terms of product sourcing.
Exactly.
Awesome. Hey, Jane, we appreciate your time. Like Liran said, we'd love to have you back probably next year to get an update on your situation. Maybe too, if we could just have you close with a little piece for us. We actually are, at the time of us recording this, we're opening up our Amazing Freedom private label course here soon. Jing, I know that because you attended that summit and everything, you've had access to that. You've had access to our inner circle group and just being able to talk to Liran all the time. Maybe you could just give us your experience with the course, if it helped you at all, and then obviously your relationship with Liran, we already heard about that. Maybe if you could just give us one or two quick thoughts about that.
Oh, sure. So I've been in the course for over a year now, I want to say, and I really love the way you organize the recordings. And a lot of the times, even nowadays, I go back to the same video. I have to watch it again. Every single time I pick up something new. And being in that support group, even when sometimes I don't think it's a Liran worthy question, I post it there, someone will get back to me, whether Nathan or a fellow seller or anyone. I think it's really important, like we talked about earlier, to have that network of people doing exactly the same thing to support you and just to give you different perspectives. It's quite amazing. Like Amazing Freedom.
Right. We named it appropriately. All right, Jane. Well, we appreciate your time again. We know you're busy, maybe not as busy as you used to be though, but we appreciate your time and having you on. It's been great to get to know you and see you. And I hope we get to see you more at future conferences this year. Any of our listeners, if you have a chance to see Jing at an Amazon conference, make sure you say hi. She's just as friendly as she sounds. Her voice sounds here on the podcast. So we appreciate that. If you're interested in the Amazing Freedom course, definitely recommend you go to amazingfreedom.com/early. You can see what's involved with that and get signed up for the early notifications to get into that. We only open that course limited times throughout the year. If it's something that you're interested in moving maybe from RA to private label like Jing did, or maybe you're just looking to get started on Amazon and you want to get started the correct way and not have to stumble your way through the process, definitely recommend that you do that. And then you can ask Liran all your questions and he will get you the right answer. So thanks guys for having us on. Liran, as always, and Jing, it was really awesome to hear your story, and I'm looking forward to getting an update from you next year.
Thank you for having me. Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Awesome. We'll catch you on the next episode of the Amazon Seller Podcast.